Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we'll be doing a review for Invincible Season 3 premiere. We're just going to be talking about the first episode. I will very likely make videos for the other two episodes that dropped. So they dropped 3 episodes for Season 3. We're going to get them all 8 in a row. There's not going to be any breaks this time around. So it'll be a weekly release after this initial drop. Um, the season came back with a vengeance. Really cool. I didn't skip the recap because there was so much that happened at the end of last season. I needed to freshen up, and I'm glad I did. I think this show usually gives you a nice little recap of like, here's what you need to know. These are the things that are happening. It's very good at making sure to give you just enough to remember where the high stakes are, where those big stories are happening. The thing I really enjoy about this show is that there is the idea that there's an ever looming threat in this world, but there's also like stuff happening all the time. Like every day, something's going on, right? So let's get into this episode. I'm gonna get into spoilers, but before I get into spoilers, great episode. I think to me, the thing that would make this show like great would be if sometimes the animation would be a little bit better. And I'm still caught between like, is this a stylistic choice or is this just like the way that it turned out? I never quite fully know. Sometimes I really feel like it's just the way the animation turned out, uh, because there is no, I don't see an additional purpose, I guess, for some of the choices that are being made. But this was a great episode. Uh, the main crux of it, Mark is training because the Vultramites are coming. They've already kicked his butt pretty badly last season. And his father's away in prison. Alan's away in prison. There's not a lot to help, so he needs to get stronger. And that's what we see, an opening montage of Mark just training, whether he's training with some other people that are powered individuals, lifting the world's biggest iceberg, using mechanical things to just test himself. And we can see that there's been great improvements since his last encounter with the Voltramite. So that's very, very cool. But Mark's also dealing with a lot internally, right? He's got to reconcile things with Eve. His brother Oliver keeps growing up, of course. So there's many things happening. So uh, we see Rex, which has come back fully healed from last season, and Mark, who have to go. And this was a really fun thing. They have to go save the Declaration of Independence. We see that two, what I assume are time travelers with some kind of special powers, or maybe not powers, just probably tech from the future that allows them to have appear to be enhanced. They steal the Declaration of Independence. Why? We don't know. And as they are about to get caught, Multiple shows up. Who Multiple is Duplicate's brother, and he starts beating the ever loving crap out of Rex because he let her die. So yeah, Mark has to help him, and that lets those two guys get away. So after that, Kate is revealed to be alive. I think we saw this on the end credit scene of of season 2. I don't really remember. I remember there was something fishy going on, and I think that we did see it at the end of the season. So the audience, I believe, knew that she was alive, but the rest of the superheroes, the Guardians of the Globe, did not. We check in with Oliver, who has now developed powers. He keeps growing up. It looks like they're gonna slow down his aging once he becomes kind of like a full teen. And we've seen pictures and still of him in his outfit for season 3. So we'll definitely get Invincible is definitely getting a sidekick. All throughout, we see that they've been talking about Doctor Seismic, who has been imprisoned, but we know he's up to something. Cecil and the gang discover it too late. He escapes prison. He strikes using communication methods with all these underground, like creatures from the underground, giant spiders, these giant like caterpillar things, mole men or like lava men. So like all sorts of stuff that he was able to communicate using his powers. Big underground battle. All the heroes from the world have been captured by him, or at least in the U.S. maybe. All the heroes have been captured except for Eve and Mark, who were talking as Mark was trying to ask Eve out, right? We saw that he met this other Eve from an alternate dimension, and she told him like either tell your Eve that you want to be with her or let her go, like one of the two, like don't leave her hanging. Um, the battle doesn't go well for Invincible and Eve. They are very quickly overpowered because there's too many things going at them. In the meanwhile, Cecil has already got a backup plan going on, and it is revealed that Darkwing, who we saw in the last season, killed someone and pretty much had gone like ultra vigilante, like super violent killer. And then of course we know that he's been working with Sinclair to make those metal man things that he's been working on since the first season. But Darkwing and those metal men things came out and they saved the heroes. They helped them escape from their little prisons that those spiders made. So now Mark confronts Cecil about that. And that's kind of where we leave off. We leave off in a little cliffhanger with them. We do have a post credit, as always, with this show. And it's just Alan in prison talking to Nolan, trying to convince him still that he needs to go help and he needs to escape with him because they are the only hope that anybody else has to defeating the Viltrumite Empire. So that's kind of where we leave things off. It was a really fun episode. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to get to the next one. I specifically stopped myself from watching the next one so I could just do a review for this one specifically. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm gonna get videos out for every episode. My goal is to do so. So stay tuned for that in the next few hours, next few days maybe. But hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we're going to be talking about the second episode of season 3 for Invincible, now playing on Prime. I really enjoyed the first episode, and I just don't know how this show can maintain the pacing that it does. It's really interesting because as we are getting more pieces of the main story, like things keep popping up, right? And I feel like that's why the series itself, the comic series itself, was so successful. Um, this has some great stuff when it comes to character development. We learned a lot about Cecil in this episode, which is something we hadn't really explored in the series. And then of course Mark, and he has to make a lot of decisions in this one. So there's a lot of conflict here. There's a lot of reshuffling of the groups. We'll get into all those details, but yeah, another great episode of Invincible. And I can't wait to see the third one. I'm very excited. I try not to watch them before making the review so that nothing kind of comes in from that other episode. All right, so begin with a flashback to Cecil, an early mission when he was an agent, and about this bomb that's about to be diffused by these two like crazy cultists from the Fire Fist or whatever. Uh, and we see how he got his scar, which is a more gnarly thing that you would think. This bomb goes off and it just takes off everything, like his whole skin pretty much. So the scar you see Cecil has on the side of his face is actually his original skin. Everything else is like some artificial skin. The government has that technology in this world to make sure that people are stay alive, I guess. We do see that Cecil goes to prison because after his boss recruits those two people that exploded the bomb to turn them into assets, kind of like how Cecil's been doing now in the present. Cecil doesn't accept this. He kills them. He goes to prison, where he's rehabbed. Uh, and what he does at this prison is really interesting because it looks like he's at the most violent place, but in only a few years he was able to make sure that like it's an orderly place. So we see there that Cecil has those skills to have people and kind of twist them around and have them do what he wants. That's kind of his whole deal, right? And that's probably the reason that he's being asked to the big job. We flash back to the White Room with him and Mark, where Cecil tells Mark he doesn't want to control him, but there are things that he can't. He's got to use all of his assets, and that's the reason. Um, that's the reason that Sinclair and Darkwing are still working with Cecil. Mark doesn't accept this, and he's about to leave, and a bunch of reanimate just pop up, And man, oh man, I'm telling you, watching Mark tear these things apart is a lot of fun, especially because they don't hold anything back. They go all out. But Cecil does have this thing in Mark's head as he's leaving. We see that Cecil has a thing that will create some kind of frequency that we saw him when he fought the big Lobster King, um, and it just rings in Mark's head, and it's taking him out almost. So Cecil implanted something in Mark to keep control of him. He goes to As he's leaving, he goes to the Guardians for help, so that they can take out the thing from his head. Caesar shows up, the Reanimen show up, and a big brawl with the Guardians of the Globe because they want to help Mark. They know that they know how Caesar is. They don't want well, the majority of them don't want whatever's happening to Mark to continue. So after a big blowout, a lot of a lot more Reanimen dead. Um, the Guardians have to make a decision as well. So Mark goes home. He goes to regroup with his mom and his brother. The Guardians also, they split up. Not everyone stays back and decides to keep working for Cecil. So that's really it's very interesting because now the heroes are pretty fractured. So how that's gonna affect them, as they have to kind of unite to fight these Voltrumites that are coming. We get another flashback to Cecil meeting Omni-Man for the first time when he finally took over the agency job. It's very, very interesting. So, and then finally in the post-credit scene, we get Eve and Mark kind of having a heart-to-heart, picking up from where they left off before the original fight in the first episode. Um, yeah, this was a good one, just a really good one to kind of move all the pieces, shake them up. Mark now working with Cecil again. Uh, the way Cecil and Mark's relationship flip flops is like it feels like it happens almost every other episode. Which, when you don't have a lot of episodes, it makes sense, right? Um, because they both want to protect Earth. They just both have very different approaches to it. I'm interested to see how the Guardians of the Globe that left, what they're gonna do. Maybe they'll form a new team. But obviously, like where they're getting resources from and all that. So that'll be interesting to see. And then the Guardians of the Globe that stayed, which now include Darkwing, how that's gonna play out. So Cecil mentioned to the Guardians that stayed that he will have Darkwing can join the team, and then also the Reanimen will show up whenever they need them. So yeah, there you have it. Episode 2 of season 3, kicking off, continuing with a bang. Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Invincible Season 3, Episode 3. This was the last episode we got from the release weekend. After this, we'll get weekly episodes, so I should be able to cover those as they release, I believe on Thursdays. But yeah, stay tuned to the channel for that. This was just another great way to kind of close out the first, not really arc, but just leave us in a place where we have enough of the story. There's only 8 episodes in a season, so we're really getting through almost half the season with this 3 episode premiere. This was really good. I think my one concern this season continues to be a little bit of the animation. Some of the character designs changed a little bit. Like I think Eve changed a little bit. Some of the other members of um, the Guardians look a little bit different. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a choice, if that's just maybe something that happened in the process of them getting, you know, trying to speed up a little bit of how we get the next season. This last season came out really quickly compared to some of the other stuff. But yeah, I think overall the story continues to be pretty strong, very interesting. The characters continue to have an arc, especially Mark going through a lot of stuff right now. So yeah, let's get into some of the details. Uh, we get to see some of the criminals from, I think we saw these guys maybe season 1, at trying to like it's a little montage, which is a great kind of trick to not have to do any dialogue, right? It's just like a song playing over and you see like everything that's going on. They rob a bank, it doesn't go right, they get jobs, they try to build an actual life, but then ultimately life kicks them so hard that they end up going back to the criminal ways. This is where Mark finally shows up, and Oliver shows up as well. We saw in the last episode that they both got new outfits. Mark got a new Invincible, like more darker tone outfit, and then of course, um, Kid Omni Man, as Oliver's going by right now. We don't really have a public name yet, but he also has his own outfit now. So he joins the fight. He helps Oliver. He helps Mark take these guys down. Mark's still not fully convinced that Oliver should be helping him out with this stuff, and I think that's going to be the big source of the conflict, right? As Oliver becomes a teenager and he ages into maturity and his powers develop, like he will be stronger and maybe have less control, and also just that'll build conflict with Mark and his mom. We see Amber and Eve catching up in college, which is like, oh boy, Mark, your exes are getting together. Well, I guess not exes, your ex and your current girlfriend are getting together. So, but it goes well. They're pretty mature. I like that this show doesn't like go into the route of having to create a weird out of nowhere love triangle, right? It just kind of goes to like, yeah, sometimes people are mature and this is how they deal with issues. We see the Guardians, the part of the Guardians that left, they moved back into the Teen Team HQ, and that's kind of where they're setting up their basis of operations. We get a little more so of like Rex's backstory, and there are rumors out there that we will get a Rex Exploder special like we did for Adam Eve. So that should be fun. I mean, Jason Mantzoukas. I like him, and I like that he, the character that he's doing. I think Rex is a very interesting character because he has this facade of like doesn't care and crude and all that, but we know there's a lot more under there. Um, Invincible and Oliver get into their first actual action as these villains try to bust out multiple out of jail, and we see them, and like I said, it's going. I think overall it's going well, but not always. I think Oliver's still very impulsive, so and also, it's interesting that multiple was actually a villain. I didn't realize that, or that he works for the, I guess, the kind of like the mafia or something like that. The Mauler twins are back. They show up um, at this facility to try to, I don't know, explode it or whatever the case. The old Guardians, the ones that are still working for the government, they show up to stop them. That doesn't go well. They are very much prepared. The Maulers are very smart, so they are always a big threat. Mark shows up to help on his out of his own volition. He sees it on the news, and he goes to help not because he wants to help Cecil, but just because he knows that he should stop the Maulers. Oliver also sees in the news and it goes to help. And while Mark is taken out, he kind of unleashes his dark side. While Mark is going to stop this giant missile, so we were getting more of that rebellious teen Oliver. Like he kills the Maulers, and like he he killed the first one. Maybe that was an accident. Killing the second one, which the Immortal was there for to witness, that was no accident. He did that for sure on purpose. So he's gonna have to get a talking to. He's gonna have to. There's gonna be consequences, I think, from that. And then lastly, as the family kind of comes back together, Mark discovers that he's being watched. And in a post-credit scene, they try to hint at who may be watching. Now, I won't say who it is. I'm pretty sure I know who it is because of the credits, but I don't want to give you that if that's the way the story goes. Um, but we do see Sterling K. Brown's name in the credits of this episode, so make with that information what you think. But another great episode of Invincible. I'm really enjoying this season. I love the show. I forget how much I enjoy the show until I'm back watching it. Like in my mind is always like, yeah, I have a good time with the show, but I really just enjoy it so much once I'm back into the world of it. Not enough to start reading the comic, especially because I don't want to spoil myself of what may be coming in the future. From what I've seen, this season's been pretty faithful to the comic books, so that's always fun. But maybe once the series is over, I'll go back and do a reread and just see what areas they expanded upon, what things they kind of tucked back. So yeah, we'll see. But a lot more stuff coming from Invincible season 3. Really fun. Make sure to go check it out. And if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. Hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we'll be doing a review for Invincible Season 3, Episode 4. This was a very interesting way to present this episode. The majority of it happens within the first 30 minutes. Then we have a break. I think we've done this before where we take a little, like it feels like the end of the episode, but then the last 20 minutes revolves around a completely different story. So they're doing that again. But another great episode. This one really moves the story forward when it comes to Nolan and Alan and everything they're doing. And brings back one of my favorite characters. So we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, really good stuff. I'm not gonna complain about the animation or anything like that anymore because I think the we are just at that point. But I will say there are some things that look pretty cool, and there are just some things that you can tell that there was a little bit of cutbacks or maybe like just holding back on some animation budget to make sure that the episodes probably went out. So interesting how that works. But it is what it is at this point. I think you're either on board or you're not. Same thing with the ads. Like we're getting like 3 ads per episode, which I guess it doesn't seem a lot if you're comparing it to like regular TV shows. But I mean, I'm paying for this streaming service, so I know that's a common complaint. I just really hadn't really talked about that, but yeah, I don't mind it so much with the movies where you can just watch the ads up front and then enjoy the rest. But man, oh man, with these TV series, Amazon really goes to town on those ads, trying to get you to spend the extra buck to get the ad-free experience. Luckily, I don't do a lot of my TV watching on Amazon Prime other than like I guess there's 4 main shows: Invincible, The Voice, and Gen V, which I count as one. Wheel of Time and Rings of Power. So, all right, but let's talk about this episode now. We see first of all Rex and Ray, who Ray is trying to get some kind of normalcy back into her life, I think, and that's really interesting. They go grocery shopping. She wants to cook. She wants to make dinner for the people, the new Guardians, the ones that left the old Guardians. I guess I'll refer to them as that. I don't know if they've mentioned a new name or a code name, but it is what it is. But their grocery shopping trip, even though Rex is being kind of a pain, he eventually comes around to try to help with the normalcy. I think he likes Ray. I think Rex and Ray, they have a bond, but they are interrupted afterwards by an exploding bus, so everything kind of goes to hell from there. We catch up with Mark, who brought that camera device that he exploded last episode to Rudy to see if he could tell them and give more information on it. Obviously, because the item had been destroyed, Rudy can't really help, but he does tell him that this is from somebody that has plenty of resources. Now I think we know who it's from, but we won't. I'll wait for the show to reveal everything. Mark goes to see Cecil, thinking that maybe it was a device that he's using. Now, first of all, I think I've said this before, but uh, I love seeing Mark just tear through the Reaniman. He does this again when he goes into the Pentagon. But it turns out Cecil's not the one watching him, at least not with that device. We do learn that Cecil's still keeping an eye on Mark and his family. But he's also now worried about who else is keeping an eye on them, right? Um, we get to see Mark and Eve's first date, which gets interrupted by a dropkick in Fight Master, the two time traveling bandits from that took the Declaration of Independence in the last episode. They need Mark to save their future. There is this king who lives a very long time, who is very powerful, and who has really just gone down and started killing people and exhibiting some really severe rules upon the people. So they need Mark to kill him. We do find out that this is the immortal who was made king after Mark from that future left him in charge. And he wants Mark to come back and end his suffering, right? He wants Mark to kill him so that he can finally move on. Um, Kudos to the immortal voice actor. I think just such a great performance of like how different of this immortal had to be. Somebody that's been drained of like reason to live. Somebody that's just been through so much. He has lived for so long that he can't bear it anymore. Mark ultimately does kill him. He gets the Declaration of Independence back. Goes back to his date as if nothing happened because it is time travel shenanigans. So they finally have a date. Mark and Eve finally have a date. And as we go into Mark's room for them to have some alone time, that's when the episode kind of ends, and we cut away to the secondary story here, which, of course, you know, if you've been keeping track of the end credit scene, we're going back to see Alan the alien. We're going back to see Nolan in that prison. Nolan is to be executed, so two Voltrumites are coming to do that dirty deed. Alan finally breaks out of prison. He plans this whole breakout, and he finds the battle beast. To how did they even imprison the battle beast? That's got to be like a whole little one shot on its own. But him, you know, Battle Beast teams up because he's looking. Battle Beast is just looking for a challenge, so he knows that two Voltrumites should be enough of a challenge for him to, you know, have a good fight. So Alan and Battle Beast eventually find Nolan. They save him. Battle Beast is just distracting the Voltrumites. Really, he doesn't really care about saving Nolan, but Alan does. And when Alan looks like he's about to die at the hands of one of these Voltrumites, Nolan finally snaps out of it and snaps into play, and they defeat the Voltrumites. Alan and Nolan kind of go on their own, where Nolan reveals the biggest secret of the Voltrumites and their weak point, I guess, and that is that there are only about 50 Voltrumites that are pure blooded left, which those are the strongest one, right? And that is the reason, their weakness. That's the reason they don't just send people out. That's the reason that the Empire doesn't fully go out and conquer a lot of like all these places. They've been on the back heel, and nobody really knew this. They just knew of the legend of the Voltrumites, and they're scared of them. So finally, Nolan reveals this, and I think this is going to be the turning point of the battle. Maybe it at least gives him hope. It gives Alan hope that there are enough forces in the universe now to take down the Voltrumite Empire. So we'll see how that plays out. Um, Another really fun episode. Really enjoy this one, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. So there you have it. Hello, everyone. Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Invincible Season 3, Episode 5. I gotta tell you, this was not my favorite episode, and I think the reason was mainly because I love how Invincible has managed to have a balance between the Viltrumite story and other side stories that are going on. So yeah, this one was just not my favorite. There wasn't a lot of Viltrumite stuff. We didn't even. I know we got a lot of stuff in the last episode, but like, I just want to check in, right? I just want to know what's going on in that part of the world. We didn't get anything with the GDA as well. Like, we didn't see Caesar at all, and I love Walton Goggins, so like whenever he's not on an episode, I'm definitely gonna notice. And I feel like those are the big things, right? We have um, uh, Mark versus the government. Mark waiting for the Viltrumites to come to Earth, and his dad trying to do stuff about it. And that mixed in with the other stories, then I think that really works. But this one, yeah, this one was really focused on. It focused on a plot that they had set up early in the season that I was not even super invested in. It's all about multiple, in the and like, and maybe it'll lead to some other stuff later on, but yeah, it's like multiple and Titan and the Order, and I was not. It was just not my favorite story. But let's go over some of what happened, anyways, just to kind of keep up with these videos. Um, so as I mentioned, multiple tries to escape in a really gnarly sequence. I love it. Like he keeps making copies of himself while one of them hangs back in the light until like they kind of explode out of the cell. So like all of these dead bodies just kind of start piling up. It's interesting to see how like you would get how his powers really work and the limit to which he can push them, right? After that, after the escape attempt, Kate duplicate visits, We get a little bit of their backstory about how their dad just couldn't cope with, you know, them multiplying around, and he had to take care of, I guess, too many children, and he just kind of lost it, and unfortunately, that's when the government swooped in and took over. And as they were growing up, Paul decided to leave and escape, uh, and eventually join the order and become a criminal, whereas Kate stayed behind. So that's where they were separated, and that's kind of how we have. One of them becoming a hero and one of them becoming more of a villain. Meanwhile, we catch up with Mark. We have a family breakfast. Now, this is after Eve and Mark spent the night together. So like it's really funny, right? Like like Oliver keeps making these comments about like, oh, they were loud and stuff like that, while Mark's still trying to hide the fact that him and Eve spent the night together. So Mark realizes maybe he's got to move out to his own apartment, so he's got to monetize Invincible. How does he get money? I guess maybe Cecil and the government were giving him some kind of stipend, maybe for being part of the Guardians of the Globe or just being kind of like an employee of the government. So now he's got to find his own source of income, and um, Eve comes up with this Invincible Ink, which would mean that you can kind of rent like a Heroes for Hire thing. Like if you've ever read Heroes for Hire, but in this case, you get Invincible, which is like probably a really good investment, specifically for the prison. They get Invincible on retainer, and because there's been so many attacks, because they've been trying to break Paul out of prison. We also know that Titan is the one that kind of took over the neighborhood after Machine Head, where after he betrayed Machine Head, put him in prison. So he visits Machine Head in prison, and they talk about the looming threat of Lou and the Order. But it all kind of pays off at the end, and we'll talk about that. So Eve and Mark team up to stop Lou. So Lou shows up. He tries to kill Titan, and he shows up and becomes a dragon, which is very cool, like really cool power. Although it's interesting because the dragon comes out and his body kind of stays behind unconscious. That's why he's always got the bodyguard around to kind of keep his body safe. So the dragon goes to the prison to try to break out Paul. And then, of course, Mark and Eve show up because they are now part of Invincible Inc. on retainer with the prison. So they try to stop the dragon. It turns out that this was all part of Titan's plan to kill Lou, because once the dragon is out of his body, he's very easily taken out, or so we think. So they kill Lou. Machine Head, he escapes from prison, takes over the order, and Titan just asks for his piece, his city, his neighborhood to be left alone, and I think that's kind of what he's getting. But we do have a little bit of a, not really after credits, like this was like the episode sort of ends and then there's another extra scene. We see the bodyguard carrying or cleaning Lou's body around, Lou's body, and he summons a different dragon. I don't know if it's a different dragon, the same dragon. I don't understand his powers very well. And maybe just a dragon that comes from a different dimension. That's what he was telling Invincible, which he got his butt kicked pretty well. So if there's not that many Viltrumites, I do think that there are enough things on Earth that would maybe be able to, like, if everybody on Earth works together, and maybe that's the end game. I haven't read the comic. If everything on Earth works together, they could probably stop the Viltrumites. If there really is only 50 pure-blooded ones, like Nolan mentioned in the last episode. But anyways, we get a glimpse and a hint that the dragon is back inside of Lou's body, so maybe he's back alive. So I don't know if it's the same dragon that they killed, or if it's a different dragon. I don't really know how his powers work. So, but there you go. And like I said, not really anything having to do with the Viltrumite invention, invasion. Not really having anything to do with the GDA and Mark's relationship. We don't even get an update on who is the one watching over Mark and his family. Although there is one little subplot that Oliver does make some friends, and that's kind of nice. But it's like I said, overall, it's still just not my favorite episode. But it was enjoyable nonetheless. Like I really love this show, but we only have three left. And we need to get to it. We need to get something going. So I think the next one is going to be like really, really story driven, or at least I hope so. Hello, everyone. Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Invincible season 3, episode 6. Before I get fully into spoilers, I gotta say this one, as I talked about the last one, I was not very excited about it, but this one kind of brought us back into the fold, even though this one does not really touch on anything with the Voltrumites as well. Like the story once again is kind of unfreeze, and I feel like they're gonna save all the Voltrumite stuff, maybe to really come to a fruition, like in the last episode, and really flesh it out in the last season. And I feel like they just want to give us a little bit more character arcs. Really interesting. We had Powerplex in this episode, so if you read the comics, you probably already know what the story is. Aaron Paul voice Powerplex, and it's like a very recognizable voice, so that's really interesting. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. I think I like the stories that we touched on, and I'll go over that in detail in a minute. Um, I I will always I'll continue to mention the animation just because sometimes it really stands out how many little tricks they do. Like when a character talks, sometimes you don't see their mouth, right? Like the mouth's covered, so like they don't have to animate that. So there's a lot of little shortcuts and things, but sometimes they're pretty noticeable. Either way, I'm enjoying the show. I think I will sacrifice a little bit of the animation quality, just because the story overall it's very good. I think the voice acting is really cool. They have some great music. Like there's music in the show every once in a while, and it just like I feel like it's at great places. And yeah, I really like it. Also, if you don't follow Ryan Otley, who is the artist for most of Invincible. He was not the artist at first, but he jumped on like relatively early, and really drew pretty much like 90% of Invincible, probably more. If you don't follow him on social media, he usually posts panels from the comic that are related to the episode that's going on. He's listed as a creative consultant in the credits, so like that would make sense. So it's really cool to see his original art versus what the translation ends up being in the series. So, anyways, all right. So here we go. This episode really is about Powerplex, and we start with a flashback to the fight in Chicago where Omni Man was kicking Mark's butt. He shoots him through a building. The building starts to fall. Mark catches the building, but people still fall out of the windows. That was probably one of the worst incidents that happened with Omni Man, right? As far as like damage and deaths and population and all that stuff. So it's coming up in a year anniversary, but in the meanwhile, we follow this character who is, like I said, voiced by Aaron Paul. His name is Scott. His sister and his niece died in that incident in Chicago. Now he's looking for revenge. When we're introduced to him, we see that he's got electric powers that are activated by I guess collisions. So like whenever he gets hit, he generates a little bit of electricity. Nothing that would be too crazy. But that's planting the seeds there, right? We cut back to the present with Oliver training with the Mark against I think Elephant Man was the character, and it's really funny because they talk about like Mark would also train with this guy. Like as far as like he's a villain, but he's like a lower level villain. I think it's funny, maybe a play on kind of the Rhino character or something like that. Um, Interestingly enough, Powerplex, his wife looked like Jessica Jones, and for a minute I thought that they might have had Kristen Ritter voicing the character. I did not find that to be the case. I don't know what the character looks like in the comics, so I don't know if she's supposed to be look if she's meant to look like Jessica Jones, or she's just somebody with dark hair and a very white complexion that happened to end up looking like Jessica Jones when they put her in the show. We see a family dinner, including Paul and Eve. So it looks like the family is all together. They're preparing because the next day they have to go to Chicago for the memorial. Um, in the meanwhile, Scott Powerplex, he causes an incident because he wants Mark to come try to stop him. Right? He has these discs. He used to work for the government, so he found a way to enhance his powers to a level where he can actually take out Invincible, and that's really his whole story is about revenge, and not really healing from that, which is crazy because his wife supports him to the point to a really crazy point. That was very weird. But yeah, they do a really fun bit where uh, Powerplex keeps calling out Invincible, but every time instead of saying the name Invincible, like you see the card, the title card with the name, which I was like, it made me think like, do they not say the name Invincible? But they do. They say it later on in the show. But that was just a fun bit. Like they showed the title card like maybe 5 or 6 times. I thought that was really interesting. But Mark was bowling with his friend, so he was ignoring. He was taking the night off from being a superhero. Next day, we're at the memorial for the victims, and once again, Powerplex he calls out Invincible, but Eve takes care of the problem, and the Guardians then kind of wrap things up. But Powerplex still escapes. In the meanwhile, we get a little bit of a story of Monster Girl, who we see. Usually, when they do an intro, they give you like little pieces of story that are going to be relevant to the episode, and we see that one of those was Monster Girl. So Robot makes a belt to fix her issue of he discovers how the curse works. Every time that Monster Girl turns into the monster, when she turns back into human, she's a little bit younger, right? So obviously the more that she turns, the younger she's going to be, and that's kind of the curse that she's got placed upon her. But Robot figures out a way to, with this belt, to make sure that she doesn't age backwards. So that's just a little taste. We also have a story of Rex and Ray, shrinking Ray, who is quitting the team, and she asks Rex to come along after their dinner. There was a little bit of a romantic effort there, but Rex tells her that all he knows how to do, and all he is Rex Explode. He doesn't really have anything else to go to, no family, no nothing, right? He was sold to the government. um, he's got a pretty messed up origin story, and I believe they're gonna do like a special one, like an episode, like they did for Adam Eve, about Rex Explode, and I think that'd be great. I love Jason Mantzoukas, so I'm glad that not only that he's getting work, but that he gets to do more and explore this character even more. So we finally get it. What we've been working towards the full episode: Powerplex versus Invincible. In a one last ditch effort, Powerplex pretends to kidnap his own wife and kid. He has a baby with his wife. Pretends to kidnap them and sends out a message to Invincible. Mark finally acquiesces and goes into the battle. This is it's a great battle, but it's pretty emotional because Powerplex, in his quest for revenge, which I knew this was where it was going on the whole time, in his quest for revenge, unleashes too much electric power and accidentally kills his daughter, his wife and kid, and they show everything. Like they're not holding back. This show, they don't hold back on any of that stuff. So finally, Invincible takes down Powerplex, and he's put in jail. But I feel like we're not done with the character, especially if you're gonna cast somebody like Aaron Paul to voice the character. I don't think he's just a one and done episode. I feel like a lot of these big villains and big bads that are coming, they may come back to maybe the one last big fight against the Vultramites, where everybody's gonna have to pitch in, really good, bad, and indifferent. You're gonna have to pitch in to take out the Vultramites. But we'll see how that goes later on in the show. The last thing, we do have an after credit scene where it is revealed that another camera is watching Mark, and it is revealed that it is another Armstrong, or a version of Armstrong. So he's not dead. He's back, and he brought a what I call a council of Marks. So we see Invincible and Marks from all over, like all kinds of different universes. Um, that's going to be interesting to explore. I feel like that's what maybe the finale. Like, how did he convince all these Invincibles or these Marks to come along, and like what is the end game there? So yeah, exciting episode of Invincible. Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. I think the season's going fantastic so far. Like I said, I think to my liking, episode five's been the weakest, but they're all been pretty strong overall. So when it comes to story and everything, so exploring the characters, I really hope we get a little bit of Ultramite stuff in the next one. I feel like we're gonna get Voltramite stuff in episode 7 to kind of wrap that up for the season. Maybe leave that big cliffhanger at the end of the episode. And then episode 8, will wrap up this multiverse storyline with Armstrong and the other Invincibles slash Marks. We'll see though. I'm not the showrunner. I just That's just based on my years and years of watching TV and reading comics. That's how I would plan it out. So, hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, we're going to be doing a review for Invincible Season 3, Episode 7. This is it. We had been waiting for the Invincible War as it was teased at the end of the last episode. Boy, oh boy. This one was written by Robert Kirkman, so not only did he make up the original story for this in the comic, of course, along with artist Ryan Ottley, but this episode itself was also written by Kirkman. So like this goes to show you the level of how much they were committed to this bit, how much they wanted this to be a success, because Robert Kirkman is a busy, busy man. This was fun. It's full of all the really crazy, outlandish, goofy stuff that I love from the comics. Now, although I haven't read all of Invincible, like the tones there, the gore, the way they just kind of push the envelope. There's some really gnarly stuff in this one. Of course, it's a fight of all these. Not only this column, the Council of Marks, but like the whole of the superheroes that are trying to defend the Earth, and then of course finding out what Levy's plan is. So yeah, intense stuff, but it was really, really good. Let's talk about what happened in the episode itself. First of all, we see a lot of Invincibles, a lot of Marks running around, but we also take a look at how Levy survived the fight with Mark. Last time we saw him, Mark literally beat him to a bloody pulp. Like his face was split open. I don't know what kind of augmentations he already had. Maybe just from that machine his organs were different, that he could survive in like that beat up state. He had set up and hired these he calls them technicians that were there on standby to fix him after, in just in case he had a backup plan after fighting Mark, right? And yeah, this is it. This kicks off Invincible War. It is all hands on deck, right? Everybody there. The Invincibles, they start attacking strategic positions in different cities all over the globe. They called out 18 Invincibles at the beginning, and we see them running all over the globe, fighting all kinds of superheroes. They're attacking the prisons, so like it, which I feel like that was kind of dumb because that meant that villains would get out that would probably fight them or oppose them, right? As much as a lot of the villains are bad people, they probably don't want Earth destroyed by a gang of Invincibles. Also, a lot of those villains were put in prison by Invincible or his dad Omni Man, so like they already had kind of a grudge against Mark, so they'll take it out on any Mark. Ask Powerflex. All right, so yeah, we get to see everyone. Oliver joins the fight after a very nice moment with his mom. The GDA's all over it as well, including I forget the name of. I just call. I just think of him as Coulson because to like that's definitely who the character is. It has to be based on a Coulson like character. But yeah, a lot of things happen in this episode. Some of them hurt, including Rexplode. He dies, right? After one of the Marks attacks, or one of the Invincible attacks, the Teen Superhero Clubhouse. Um, Rex is the only one that's there. He buys everyone a little bit of time to escape, and now Rex can only explode inorganic matter from what it seems. So he throws everything at this Invincible, and then once he has out of options, he has a wound on his side, so he blows up his own skeleton. So I don't think Rex is coming back from this one. I'm very, very upset. He was one of my favorite characters. Obviously, he had a very interesting kind of relationship going on with Ray. And then, of course, he's voiced by one of my favorite people, Jason Mantzoukas. So, like, I hope that we can find a way to, I know Robot is used his genes, but his voice is different. Yeah, I don't know. I hope we can find a way to either bring Rex back because this is comic books, um, or maybe just bring Jason Mantzoukas back in some other role. Although it would be very distracting to hear his voice somewhere else. But I do think the GTA could have like Rexplode genes because they kind of own Rexplode just based on his arc and based on what he learned about him. Anyways, I'm sure we'll talk more about Rex when his special comes out. I'm pretty sure they're making one. After day 3 of the invasion, phase 1 is complete per Levy. The Invincibles, they all meet up with Levy outside of Mark's house. There's only 8 left. And the closed captioning was pretty funny because they're all Mark, they're all invincible. So like they had to come up with funny names. Like it said Omni Invincible, so like the one that was dressed like Omni Man, or Goggle Invincible, the one that wore the weird goggles. So they each had their own little code name, and they were all invincible, but they were all had their little code name in the caption, which was really funny. They turn on Levy, of course, because he betrays them. So he sends them each back to that desert dimension where he was fighting Mark at the end of their fight. And then finally, Mark shows up. He realizes that he's there because Eve's hurt. One of the Invincibles broke her leg and then like threw her. Like she was pretty hurt, like down and out. But Levy, he fights Invincible. Really cool fight. Uh, Levy has a very interesting way of fighting because obviously he doesn't have superpowers like Invincible does, but he's got all these like I mean, they're pretty much like the terrific tech balls, right? That are running around, but he's got hundreds of them, and his goal is to push Mark into one of the portals, like he did with their first fight. But Mark learned his lesson. He does some really cool stuff to like kind of stop midair. There's a lot of really interesting navigation of flight. Yeah, it's a fun fight. Levy escapes, goes back to those technicians that fixed them, but he also kind of not he did not cover the promise that he did to those technicians, so they turn on him as well. Obviously, the tech that they infused him with, they also use it now to control him. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna see those guys again. There is no way this arc is over, especially because Levy is such an interesting villain. We explored the devastation all over the world. Gigantic cities were destroyed. Mark gets to meet Eve's parents as they come to visit her in the hospital, and he has an interesting conversation with his mom. The dad, as always, like just very standoffish. Cecil offers Mark to lead the Guardians, and I think he should do it, but Mark's very hard-headed, and also he doesn't trust Cecil, so uh, at the end of the episode, we leave with this: Conquest, one of the Vultramites, voiced by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, comes to Mark with an ultimatum after the events of this. So, yeah, we're gonna have an all-out fight with another Vultramite in the next episode, and then who knows how the season's gonna end. I'm pretty sure. I think there's only 8 episodes this season, so that's it. We have one more, and Invincible is done at least for now. So hello everyone, Daniel here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for the Invincible Season 3 finale. Uh, this was a great episode of television, and I really enjoyed this season of Invincible overall, but this episode really brought everything kind of to a great place to stop the story for now, with the big fight between Conquest and Invincible, as we kind of saw it being set up. The world's in shambles for multiple reasons that have been going on through the season. And then, of course, this episode, not only does it kind of finalize this arc in Mark's life, but it also sets up a few things I will probably see in upcoming seasons. Um, I think one of the things that I did notice was that, at least for the big fight, the animation really stepped up. It really felt more dynamic, a little bit more fluid. Like it felt different. Sometimes the character models are a little bit static, but like in this one, you could see like Invincible's hair flowing in the wind, and like especially when there was like close up of the characters, like there was a lot of detail. We get to see some really cool evolutions of some powers. So yeah, this is great. I'm gonna get into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the finale, make sure to go check it out. We also have in the channel, or will have, another video where I take a look at the trailer for the Battle Beast one shot comic that is coming out from Image Comics in the future. So make sure to go check that out. It's probably a short because it's a very short video. But either way, we begin with Conquest versus Invincible. Jeffrey Dean Morgan does just his characters are always just so intimidating, and Conquest is no different. Like Conquest is probably, I would like to think that he's maybe one of the strongest Voltrumites, and that's the reason that he was sent to do the job. But his performance, his voice performance, is just like daunting. It's like all his worst characters kind of put together in one, this big blender. Yeah, so really goes all out. So shout out to Jeffrey Dean Morgan for. I'm sure he loves to work with Robert Kirkman in his projects, and he's just such a great addition to this voice cast. Will he come back? I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned for that. So after this brutal fight, Invincible is taking a pounding because Conquest is just super strong. Like he's too strong, and then he also has the advantage that there are people all over the place that he can hurt. They do the thing again where uh, Conquest just flies Mark through the city, and he starts inadvertently killing all these people because they're just kind of in the way. Like Mark and Conquest, as they fly by all these people, they just kill them. They destroy cities. They go all over the place. So Oliver joins the fight, but this time he does have Deb's blessing. Like Deb tells him, like, here's what you should do. Stay quick. Get away from him. Um, this is kind of where, like I said, in the fight in my notes, I noticed that the animation really stepped up. Eve wakes up from the hospital with her parents, and she decides that she has to go help Mark. She still has a broken leg though, but she makes like a makeshift cast with her powers. Um, After the big fight, Oliver is kind of taken out. Uh, he's almost ripped in half by Conquest. Like, and it's interesting because like his people are originally kind of like bug people, and I thought that's what's gonna happen. Like it's just kind of like he gets ripped in half, but because he's kind of like half bug, half Voltramite, maybe he could still go on. But that doesn't happen. Unfortunately, they did not rip a child in half in this episode. Cecil does eventually come get him and take him to get healed. Um, Eve steps up and she kind of goes like next level versus Conquest. She uses all her knowledge of like everything she could do to an organic matter to try to take him down. But ultimately, Conquest is too strong. He ends up breaking her leg, and then like he puts his fist through her abdomen, and he breaks her jaw, and then yeah, it's really bloody and graphy and gory, like this show always is. Invincible thinks that she is dead, and this causes Mark to like really lose it. There's a really cool scene where they both punch each other, and Invincible breaks his hand, and Conquest, like his I think it's like a fake metal hand that he had on there, it breaks as well. Um, and then Mark just like he's about to die. He can't take on Conquest, but we see that Eve evolves to the next thing, and this is explained a little bit later. But she uses like this gigantic beam, and she flays Conquest, like a lot of his skin comes off, and then Mark uses that advantage to finish him off just by headbutting him over and over because both of Mark's hands are broken at this time. So it turns out when we see this, when we know that Conquest is down and out, at least we think that, but that's kind of revealed maybe not to be the case later on, um, because Mark pretty much split his head open. But Eve can manipulate organic matter, but as a baby, some mental blocks were put on her so that she wouldn't, because she would be too powerful if she could, just manipulate organic matter. So only in times of like big stress, like her potentially dying, she's able to use those powers. So we see Rex Explode's funeral, which is very touching because obviously a lot of people had a big relationship with him. We see Ray there, not very close to everyone. She's a little bit off to the side. Of course, Eve, she's trying to say some words because her and Rex were an item for a long, long time. Um, we also see that when Eve and Mark, after the funeral, they go back to Mark's home, and They're about to have some sexy time. Eve takes Mark clothes off using her powers, but then when she puts them down, the camera zooms in on the clothes, and there's like some kind of like glowing goo. So maybe this is a side effect, or maybe this is something else. So this is the part of the episode, like as we get to kind of closing things out, where they start to seed a lot of things for next season, or even just the future of the series. We also see that those the starro-like creatures that take control of people are kind of back, and they've been hiding underneath on the underground. So I'm sure we'll see them again next season. The battle beast is found in space after killing the Voltrumites he was fighting. Um, Levy and the technicians are looking for a new world, and then Conquest it seems to be alive and kept in an underground gigantic prison by Cecil, because it looks like the guy that makes the robots has been using the dead bodies that the other Invincibles left behind to make stronger robots. I forget what they're called, dead men maybe. Um, the reanimin, yeah, he's making some reanimin made out of the bodies of the dead Invincibles. So but it looks like Cecil wants to keep Conquest on the ground so that he can question him whenever he comes to. I don't know how he's going to come to, because it looked like his face looked like it was completely opened up. But either way, and then after the initial credits, we do see that Dark Blood. So Clancy Brown is back voicing Dark Blood, who is trying to find a way to restore his master to the throne. So that'll probably be another thing we get into. So poor Mark, he can't catch a break. Uh, this season really made me think, like, why didn't the Earthlings just like vote Mark off the planet? Like everything bad that's happened is because Mark lives on Earth. But then I guess they wouldn't have a protector for internal threats like that. So yeah, great season, great stuff. I'm very excited. I really enjoyed the season. I don't think it was perfect. I think actually had a lot of things that I wish they had done a little bit better. But the story's pretty bonkers, which I really enjoy. I love the little montages with music and like just kind of like really digging at the emotions. I'm very sad that Rex is dead, but this is a comic book property, so like Rex is probably not dead all the way. Like there's got to be a way they bring Rex back, or some sort of version of Rex. We know the multiverse is out there. We know that there's time travel in this. So yeah, I would not be surprised to see Rex next season. Not only because I love Jason Mantzoukas and I love that the portrayal of Rex that he's giving us, but Rex is just such a fun character to have on the show, and it'd be a shame to not see him again. So if you enjoyed this season of Invincible, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps, all that fun stuff here in the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye bye.